Welcome to the August 18th City Council meeting. I am Jim Nash. I am the City Council President, and I will be presiding this evening. Before we begin, I want to let everyone know that this meeting and all participating on Zoom will be audio and video recorded. I now call the City Council to order. Laura, can you please call the roll?
Sure. Councillor Elkins.
Here.
Councillor Foster.
Here.
Councillor Gore.
Here.
Councillor Jarrett.
Here.
Councillor Labarge.
Here.
Councillor Maori. Not present. Councillor Moulton.
Here.
Councillor Nash.
Here.
And Councillor Perry.
Here.
Council President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And I want to let councilors know, Councillor Maori has been pulled away into a family matter. Nothing grave, but just something important for her family. And she won't be joining us this evening. Now that we are convened, we will be first holding a public hearing concerning utility poles on River Road in Leeds. Once the hearing is completed, we will take public comment. Over to the agenda here. Okay, we are holding a public hearing on item 22.094, National Grid Pole Petition to install 5 poles and remove 7 poles on River Road. That's up in Leeds. Per Mass General Laws, Chapter 166, Section 22, the Northampton City Council will hold a public hearing on Thursday. What?
I see that.
Oh,
It's
dear.
July 14th.
Oh,
That's
for
got to be a
heaven's sake.
misprint.
It sure is.
Okay, but it's properly posted, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah. Statutory notification to the abutters by postcard was mailed out.
okay, thank you. So
August 18th.
So August 18th at 7 p.m., that's right now. And on National Grid's petition to install 5 poles and remove 7 poles on River Road, the City Council will hear all persons who wish to be heard thereon. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Move to open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made by Councillor Labarge, seconded by Councillor Moulton. Laura, roll call on opening the public hearing.
Councillor Elkins.
Yes.
Councillor Foster.
Yes.
Councillor Gore. Councillor Gore? Yes,
Can
okay.
you hear me?
Faintly, yes. Councillor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
Councillor Moulton,
Yes.
Councillor Nash,
Yes.
and Councillor Perry.
Yes.
Okay, the public hearing is now open, and okay, we have Lisa Jasinski here, I believe. I saw her here. And Laura, if we could open her audio.
There she is. Okay. There we go.
Oh, here, maybe I can do it.
Good.
Should
You're
that
with
work?
us, Lisa?
I am. Can you hear me?
We are with you. Okay, so let's see, Laura, could you pull up the item from from DPW?
Sure. You want me to screen share it? Yes.
Yeah, that would be great. So later in the consent agenda, we have an item to approve this recommendation, putting in 5 poles, taking out 7 and putting in 5 poles. And Lisa is here to speak to it. this is the recommendation from the planning department, that they have looked into this matter, and they are approving of this particular action. And Lisa, would you like to speak to it?
Sure. So we've just proposed, what we have is along River Road, and it's near where Highview, just past where Highview's driveway is off of River Road. We have a pole line that goes up through the woods, behind a bunch of trees, and it's a really old pole line and nearly impossible to access, installed many, many years ago. We'd like to bring them along the road so we can access them. It's also the main line feeding up into Williamsburg and Goshen. So for reliability purposes, we want to be able to get to those wires and those poles. I've spoken with Dave Valletta from the DPW, and he has a concern about a sewage line coming down through down River Road. So we've had a discussion about that, and that has to do, I don't believe it's water, I think it's the sewage. And I believe there was a requirement for us to do some preliminary and post-work confirmation about the condition of that pipe.
And if the sewer line is damaged, National Grid will repair that?
Correct. That was the deal.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Lisa, you qualify as a proponent. Are there any opponents to this this poll petition here tonight? I see one person's hand raised, but I don't think that, is it Sakaya? Sakaya, are you here for the poll petition or public comment? Here, I will unmute you.
The public comment.
That's what I thought. Okay. All right. All right, then. Okay, so seeing no opponents and no other proponents, counselors, do you have questions for Lisa concerning this this proposal? Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made by Councillor Labarge and seconded by Councillor Moulton to close the public hearing. Any discussion on that? I didn't think so. Okay. Roll call, please, Laura,
Councillor
on closing
Foster.
the public hearing.
Councillor
Yes.
Foster.
Yes.
Councillor Gore.
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett.
Yes.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Councillor Moulton.
Yes.
Councillor Nash.
Yes.
Councillor Perry.
Yes.
And Councillor Elkins.
Yes.
Okay. The public hearing is closed on 22.094. That is currently residing in the consent agenda to be approved tonight. We will be taking up the matter in a few minutes. Okay, next up is public comment. And okay, we will now take hello.
Hi, Jim. Were there two hearings for poll relocations on tonight's agenda? Thought there
No,
was-
just one.
Oh, not Holly Street?
No.
Okie dokie. I thought I misunderstood. I think that I had it down there. Thank you very much, Laura.
Okay. All right. All right, now, okay, we've resolved poll petitions. We're now on to public comment. If you wish to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature. The raise hand feature is in the bottom menu bar under reactions. If you are calling by phone, you can raise your hand by hitting *9. If you're having trouble raising your hand, you may use the chat feature to send a message to me or Laura, to ensure equal access, and because of the open meeting law, technical problems such as not being able to raise your hand are the only thing the chat function is used for, and the chat function will only be available during public comment. We cannot accept comment over chat. Private chat or chat only visible on Zoom during a public meeting is antithetical to an open public process in violation of the council rules for public participation and violates the spirit and potentially the law of open meeting law. If you want to submit a written public comment, please send an email to citycouncil@northamptonma.gov, and it will be sent to all counselors and will be part of the public record. I will unmute each raised hand in the order raised to make a comment. Before you begin, please state your name and your city or town for the public record. To ensure everyone has an equal opportunity to speak, the council limits comments to 2 minutes. You are in no way obligated to use the full 2 minutes, but if you do, after 2 minutes, I will ask you to please finish your sentence. Tonight, do we have the timer? Yes, you will see that we have our blue sky timer on the screen, and Council Vice President Foster is helping to monitor that. According to the council rules, we do not respond during public comment, as it is your time to speak. So while your comment should be directed to us, you will understand when we do not respond. Our rules also state the counselors and members of the public shall conduct themselves with civility and respect at all times. Your protected speech is a constitutional right and one that we ask you to wield with consideration and respect for all, and do so with the recognition that the public space that grants you that freedom is shared equally by everyone. Also, according to open meeting law, if someone is disrupting a meeting, they may be removed. You may speak on any topic. It doesn't need to be an item on the agenda. I ask that all but the council turn off your video during until called upon. Only the person recognized has the floor, and all comments are to be directed to the council. This meeting can also be watched on channel 15 or by streaming on Northampton Open Media's YouTube and other platforms. Okay, public comment. We have Zakaya. And I'm asking you to unmute. And welcome, Zakaya. You have
Hello,
2 minutes.
that's my nom de guerre. My real name is Diane Palladino, and I live in Florence.
Welcome. You have 2 minutes.
Yep, I was present at the meeting on Monday night at Florence concerning the cannabis situation. Many people were there, and I think Florence spoke loudly and clearly about not wanting that particular business in Florence. I would like to second that, but I also want to make a few points. Number one, I believe that the city council, and I spoke to the 6 people I believe who were there, dropped the ball on the whole issue of cannabis shops in Northampton. They had the opportunity, could have taken the opportunity to cap the number, and they did not. So I would ask the city council, and I've asked many of them individually, to consider a cap on the number of cannabis shops in Northampton and Florence at the current number, and I was given that number, that's 14. That excludes the one in Florence. So I underscore that. I think that the counselors, I ask the council to do more due diligence when they make decisions and not just take the word of other committees or the mayor's office on what would be the best for Northampton and Florence. I would also like us to consider a change in philosophy in Northampton and ask whenever a decision or a policy is brought up from the lowest level of a meeting, volunteer meeting, to the mayor's office, that the first question that is asked is how will this help the people who live in Florence and Northampton?
Thank you, Diane. Your 2 minutes are up.
I got 14 seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going. My apologies.
Um,
No, that's actually going negative.
All right,
It's overtime. It was accidentally muted. So you didn't hear the ding.
okay.
My apologies, Diane.
So am I supposed to talk or not?
No, your time is up.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Next up is Nan.
Nancy Smith, Chapel Street. Can you hear me
Welcome,
okay?
Nancy. Yes, welcome,
Okay.
Nancy. You have the floor.
All right. I'm speaking to the proposed rezoning of the Metrics Auto property at 31 Prince Street, also known as 31 and 33 Chapel Street. First, I have no problem with Sunwood Builders building a small office space and a few apartments on this URB zone site. It is in no way, however, a planned village. My objection is the rezoning of a property which directly borders a URB zoned neighborhood, as opposed to being a street or two away from a PV zoned area. The multi-street convergence of traffic at that location could use some URB zone oversight by city boards, not just given the quick by rights use pass a PV zone change would allow. Why give the builder a hands-off ride through this process? It is a pure for builder profit only zone change. If the builder wants variances from standard URB zoning codes, let him go through the process with the appropriate permitting and boards so they and abutters can weigh in. When PV zoning is used on a large-scale project like the Village Hill condos, which did not gentrify any existing homes or neighborhoods, it's fine. Creeping PV zoning down the road into existing middle and working class neighborhoods for no reason, however, lends itself to nothing but gentrification and corruption down that road. Just look at 107 William Street as an example. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, next up is Claudia Lefko. Hello, Claudia. Let's see, unmute.
Hi.
Welcome.
I'm here. Claudia Lefko, 40 Valley Street. I'm here to comment on the appointment for the planning director. You know, this is an issue that, as we hear already from the last two comments, people care about very much in Northampton. You can tell that by the letters to the editor and by the various people who have met with the mayor. I was one of them, part of a larger group that met with the mayor. But the public, I will say, feels a bit left out. And I'll give you an example. I went to a citywide meeting about zoning and infill, and there were, I don't know, 8 or 10 of us. And a person came who announced when we went around to say, who were we, that they had come to the meeting to tell us they would not be part of this group. Why wouldn't they be part of the group? Because they had had such negative experiences with the city around a number of issues in their neighborhood, as well as their private property. So the person had driven to this meeting specifically to share with us his or her frustration over what was happening. I think it's not an isolated example. When you look at how many people voted in the last election, it was 39%. So I'm here to say, this issue of public input, of public participation is a big issue in the city. And the city council and the mayor's office seems to be ignoring us to some extent. So I'm hoping tonight that you will perhaps hold off on appointing somebody to the planning department and institute a new process, another process, maybe another search even, but one that will indeed take into account the opinions of the many, many, many people in the city who are concerned about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Next up is Michael Willers. Welcome, Michael.
Hi, thank you. Pardon me for 1 second. Okay. Hi, I'm Michael Willers. I live in Florence. I'm a pediatric cardiologist. And the reason I'm going to tell you that is because I wanted to comment on, I was also at the meeting for the pot shop. in Florence on Monday. And I feel like we have really been let down by our city government. I don't know whose idea it was. I agree with the previous speaker to have no cap, unlike any other town that I know of in Massachusetts, on the number of cannabis shops. And I'm standing here on Strong Avenue, and I am going to show you that I have 1, 2, 3 cannabis shops and a 4th one right there, all within a stone's throw. Who needs 4 cannabis shops within 100 meters of each other? I see a lot of addiction when I have patients in my office. I've seen patients come in, teenagers, addicted. I've seen heart problems that have developed from marijuana use. And those have gone skyrocketed since we have let the cannabis industry come in and run this town. And we citizens have lost this town. I've seen the use of cannabis go up at Northampton High School. I've had my kids who go there tell me about a lot of their friends who smoke every day before they go into town, before they go into school. So this is a huge problem. And I feel like it's not being addressed. I agree that there needs to be a cap. I would actually argue the cap needs to be lower. And when these pot shops start closing, as they inevitably will, new ones should not be allowed to come in. The last thing I'll say is that Northampton has really become a laughing stock. In the old days, when I told my friends I lived in Northampton, they'd say, oh, here, the music scene is great, the art scene is great, the restaurants are great. You know what they say now? Oh, that's the pot capital of the US. I've heard all about that. That's the kind of reputation that we've developed because we have let the cannabis industry come in and run our town. And I think it's a real shame. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Next up is Lizzie. Welcome, Lizzie.
Hi, my name is Lizzie. I live in Florence. I too am here about the issue of putting a cap on the dispensaries in the city of Northampton. I was at the meeting on Monday. At that meeting, I only heard 2 individuals that were pro that dispensary. Everybody else at the meeting was against it. I'm really here to speak tonight as a sober marijuana addict who's been a part of the recovery community for 15 years. Pot addiction is a real thing. It is agony, and it is being ignored by the government of this city. Specifically, I am part of Northampton's AA community. I am breaking my anonymity because of the seriousness of the onslaught of pot dispensaries in our community. It feels as though up to now, the recovery community, active addicts, and their suffering families have been disregarded during the decision-making about how many dispensaries are permitted in the city. A large part of why I moved to Northampton years ago was because it has such a strong recovery community. But now Northampton is becoming a threat to our sobriety. The location of these dispensaries in relation to mental health facilities and recovery facilities is outrageous and thoughtless, the worst of them being the proposed one in Florence. I can go into that specifics with people after the meeting if they want specifics. I'm asking the city to protect the very vulnerable and extremely large portion of our small city by placing a cap on the number of pot dispensaries. The accusation by some that there is a bias about pot that does not exist for alcohol is untrue, misguided, and offensive. I'll just wrap it up very, very quickly. What I want to say is please.
Lizzie, just one sentence.
Okay. Please protect us from this oversaturation of pot shops. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. Next up is Ellen. Welcome, Ellen.
Thank you. I'm Ellen Coteen. I've lived in Florence for over 30 years. I have several concerns. I was also at the meeting Monday. I strongly support a cap, and I strongly oppose a pot shop in Florence. I'm very concerned that the 2 new owners at that major intersection are going to change the nature of Florence. I know that rents for the small shops and businesses are going to be almost doubled. And I'd like to see what the city of Northampton can do to support these small businesses, before they go out of business. I'm also very concerned about the impact of some of the rezoning decisions that have been made in terms of affordable housing. Down the street from where I live, 3 new houses have gone up on Glendale Road. And I'm sure that they are each on less than a half an acre, which would not have been permitted previously, and they are selling for $650,000. I know the new housing in Bay State is also going for exorbitant prices. So no way has that rezoning impacted the problem of affordable housing in this city, and I think that's essential. I also want to say that, as has been said, Northampton had been seen as a destination for arts, culture, galleries, restaurants, and some very interesting small businesses, and now is a destination for pot shops. And I'm very concerned about that change. And I also want to just say that I think the planned reconstruction for downtown needs to be reconsidered and put on hold, because what the empty storefronts are only going to increase, and the impact on small businesses will only get worse when major construction is done. I don't think that construction is necessary. I think it'll be very harmful to the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Next up is Tom Bassett.
Thank you for having me speak. I
Welcome,
too
Tom.
was at the meeting on Monday for the pot shop. I'm not against pot shops, but I'm against the location that was allowed because of the zoning change. That is a bad way to introduce new visitors to Florence and Northampton, to show, the blacked out windows of a pot shop, which are typically the way the street facing windows are blacked out. I want to spin this a little bit differently, though, and say that it's time now for the city council to cap, but there's another looming issue that they need to solve in Florence, and that is get in contact with these new owners of the Shea, formerly the Shea family owned those 2 blocks. I don't know that the city council, the mayor, the Chamber of Commerce, the Florence Community Business Community Association has talked with them. There's the potential for ruining and seeing a failure of a lot of businesses, ruining the flavor of Florence. So I urge the city council to establish some commission, some committee to contact these business owners and ask them what they plan to do with those 2 blocks, and determine if there's any help that can be given to the businesses there because of the doubling of rents. I spoke to 3 business owners in the last 3 days in that block, and only one of them said that it was like doubling. None of them are against pot shops, but there's plenty of other locations, Arts and Industry Building, other places, because I don't think you're going to be able to get it together in time to cap. So my call is contact that building owner, save the businesses that are currently there with a proactive action now. Wow, right on the button.
Well done, Tom. Thank you. Next up, Wendy Foxman. Welcome, Wendy.
Hi, I have about 20 minutes of comments, and I'm happy to say that I've heard 18 minutes of my points being made already. So I'm going to edit on the quick here. So we all know that a lot of changes are happening in Florence right now. Commercial building sales to non-local LLCs, all these evictions that were just spoken to as a result of rent increases. They're not actual evictions, but that is what happens when you double rents. So many changes, and then this cannabis shop, and just recently hearing about the retirement of Rich Cooper. I'm here also about a cap. I know you've discussed this before, and our public health officials have recommended that you do this. Some counselors propose this. That was then, this is now. With all the facilities, the shops that we have now, I'm trying to edit here, 12 or 13 adult use retail shops in downtown, host community agreements with other industry businesses, 8 product manufacturers, 4 cultivators, 1 testing lab, 8 delivery services, and one micro-business cultivator manufacturer, we are popularly known as the marijuana capital. Some say they're fine with that reputation. Like many others, I'm not. I'm not when people routinely say to me, have you been downtown lately? It's just pod shops and one restaurant after another, or clothing store or other retail business closing down. An attendee at last Monday's disastrous community outreach meeting in Florence said he had called City Hall and was told, well, I'd rather have pot stores than nothing. Besides being an unprofessional response from a city employee, I do not think those are our options. So I have all this data about what other cities and towns have done that are all listed on the Cannabis Control Commission tracker website, but I will just simply say that 50 communities in the state out of the 329 in response. Oh no! Can I just say?
Finish your sentence. You can finish your sentence.
Oh well, I have so much to say. I implored the mayor not to sign the host community agreement. They did not. This is their third crack at it. If they can't run a community meeting, they cannot operate a business. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Next up is Bruce. You have the floor. Welcome, Bruce.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I unfortunately missed the meeting, but I do know a number of people who went in regards to the pot shop. I'm a professional substance use counselor. I've been a mental health counselor for 30 years in Massachusetts. I've been doing a support group for families of loved ones with mental illness and addictions for the last 15 years. The majority of our group are people in Florence and Northampton. Pot is dangerous, and I have not yet heard any of the research around the dangers of cannabis. And I think the pot industry only advertises the benefits that have to do with pot. So for example, pot is dangerous for children. And everybody says children aren't going to use pot because it's under 20. We know that's bogus. Pot, and I'm most interested in protecting our citizens who have mental illness or who are vulnerable to mental illness. Pot lowers the age of onset for mental illnesses like schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Those 3 or 4 years that might be lowered as a result of heavy pot use means a huge amount of recovery time that those people could live really productive lives. Also, adults smoking pot on a chronic basis, it affects families dramatically. It affects all of us. So I'm just really ashamed. I grew up, my kids grew up in Northampton, and I really saw Northampton as a healthy community that really took care of its own. And this decision is just horrible. It's really scary for me. So I want to join Dr. Willers and Lizzie and Ellen and Tom in saying that I'm terrified. I really, really am. I've seen families destroyed by this drug.
Thank you, Bruce. Next up is Sophie. Welcome, Sophie.
I'm Sophie, and I live in Northampton, but I spend a great deal of time in Florence. And I spend a great deal of time in Florence because I find Northampton itself to be so seedy now that I don't like to go down there. And I too was at this meeting about the cannabis. I echo everything that everyone has said so far, and I won't repeat it, except that if there is a cap, it should be capped at 12, not 14. 12, a cap of 12 would eliminate this Florence cannabis owner. And I urge the city council to do that. As for another site, they could put it on Maple Street opposite the fire department. There is a perfectly good building out of the way, off the main track if they have to sell cannabis. I have seen people try to get off of cannabis once addicted, and it is horrible. It is worse than tobacco. It is worse than alcohol. And it, among other things, gives the poor sufferer paranoia. It's a horrible disease. By the way, all the school children in our schools are taking the dope. My grandchildren, when I asked, do you have cannabis in your school? I said, oh, God, are you kidding? Everybody takes it all the time. We're always on pot in school. So how are we educating our children? Let's not do it. I know the city council can do this. You're intelligent, brilliant people, and you can follow what your public wants. We don't want that cannabis store on that corner. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Next up is, it's Gwen. Welcome, Gwen.
Hello, my name is Gwen, and I'm a resident in Northampton. And I don't know if I I don't live in Florence. In terms of this whole cannabis thing, I guess I just want to say how I feel about a few things and some thoughts. And what my concerns have been since the 3% impact fee was lifted. I believe, if I remember correctly, there was a requirement for new business owners to be living in Northampton, to be in the community. I thought the lifting of the impact fee was to give historically marginalized people opportunities to get their foot in the door in terms of cannabis. I also want to state that I was not a supporter in Massachusetts of the recreational legalization of cannabis. I was actually a supporter of the medical use of cannabis. And I'm interested in some of the research that could be done on this, but you know, so I guess I also feel that, you know, if there are small businesses going out, you know, what's happening? You know, I think sometimes, like, you know, I feel a little bit of a loss of hope in terms of like outside investors coming in, buying up properties, you know, affordable apartments that are disappearing. You know, I've always loved Northampton. To me, it's always been like a great little art place, a music place to go, and so lively in that way. And an affordable city, one of the last remaining Massachusetts affordable cities. And so those are some of my thoughts and my philosophies, and I just wanted to put in my 2 cents, and thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. Next up is Pam. Welcome, Pam.
Hi, everybody. I'm here tonight in my capacity as the city clerk, just to remind voters that September 6th is the state primary election date, and you have several ways in which to cast your vote, including vote by mail, early in-person voting, and on election day at your normal polling location. Early voting begins at 9 a.m. August 27th in City Hall, but there is no early voting on the following Sunday, so August 27th is a Saturday. And we will resume on Monday, August 29th during normal business hours, 8:30 to 4:30. It's going to be at City Hall in the hearing room on the 2nd floor, and parking spaces will be designated on Crafts Avenue for individuals who are coming to City Hall to vote. So I look forward to seeing everyone either here at City Hall, at your polling location, or helping you cast your vote by mail. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pam. Okay, next up is, it looks like Rick Haggerty. It was Lizzie for a moment there, and now it's to Rick. Okay. Welcome, Rick.
Okay. Yes. Thank you very much. I am a 26-year homeowner in Northampton, and I am an elementary special education teacher. I've got a petition with 404 signatures that say no new cannabis dispensary in Florence, Mass. People are taking a stand and saying no, because we have 12 dispensaries and we don't have a cap, and we're an outlier within Massachusetts. As I've said before, you know, our mayor planting the flag for cannabis, you've heard from the professionals that can do a lot of damage. And it happens to be as I mentioned, within eyesight of a children's library at the Lilly Library. It's 51 feet from mental health beds across the street, ServiceNet right next door, CSO Respite around the corner. And, our mayor signed off on a grow house at the CSO after school program, a DMH facility at 34 North Maple Street. And it's, 528 feet from that. Of course, in Northampton, we lowered our buffer. So we're giving away the store. We're asking for a cap. Nobody wants to be known as the pot capital of Massachusetts. Marco Aranzulo just took down his Facebook page with pro AR-15, anti-Black Lives Matter, a picture with himself with a 12-gauge shotgun and an American flag unfurled, and anti, gay marriage. This fella really has no business doing business in our town at all. I've lost a son to suicide from substance abuse and mental health issues. He hit number 18 on the Billboard charts. He's from Florence. We're so very proud of him. I don't want to see another life lost. It's too precious. So please take action on the cap and keep these Aranzulos out of our town. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rick. Okay. I'm not seeing anybody else for public comment. We'll give it a second while I figure out what we're doing next here.
Counselor Nash, I see an actual hand from Terry Coe.
Oh, there we go. All right. Welcome, Terry. I'm glad I took the time to look over my agenda, give you another moment. You have the floor. Oh, did we unmute you? You are unmuted. See if your microphone is working.
Sorry about that. Is that better now?
There you go. All right. You have the floor.
Technical issues here. Thank you. I'll make it quick. I was also I'm a Northampton resident of Village Hill, but I do spend a lot of time in Florence for a lot of the reasons other folks have mentioned, that it's a nice little downtown area. And I also have nothing against cannabis per se. It's everybody's right to use whatever legal substance they want. But I strongly agree with the others that this turning Northampton into the pot capital of Massachusetts, if not the country, is not the way you want to go for a number of reasons, which I'm sure have all been elucidated here. I do believe that the potential owner was not organized very well at meeting at all. They did not take into account how many people would be there. They didn't have a PA system. You couldn't hear people. It was very poorly organized. And if that's an indication of how they do business, I think they're just A, not good business people. B, they're not reading the market, because these things all go boom and bust. And pretty soon you're going to have a whole bunch of empty storefronts with higher rents and no more pot stores. And you're going to have to deal with the health results of a lot of, this increased use in the city as it is for what is going on now. So I would just like to add my voice to those asking for a cap on the number of these dispensaries in the town, and some more thought being given to how you want to develop this fine city, because it's a lovely place, and I think it's a real pity to turn it into, basically wall-to-wall pot shops. It's not adding anything to the community's health or cultural or anything else. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Okay, it looks like we have Keith has joined us.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
I can hear you. If you could share your name and your town and.
Sure. So I'm Keith Parzik. I live on High Street in Florence. I've been there for 20 years. And, I was at the meeting the other night, and, marijuana has been litigated already in our state, and it's so I'm not going to relitigate marijuana. There's a lot of strong feelings about it, but I do have strong feelings about the character of downtown Florence, where I spend a lot of time. And it's a bad spot for it. It's a bad spot for the flavor and character, for the families, for the kids, for the whole feel. And the folks that are looking to do it are definitely not folks who share the values that folks in Northampton do, as a couple of folks have pointed out. They're business guys. I'm a business guy, so I can appreciate that. But they're coming from Connecticut, running a private investigation business, and they see an opportunity. They see a ripe fruit that they can come try to pick. And if we're going to have another shop, can it be some local folks? Can it be maybe some minorities or someone who we can really give some benefit to, rather than folks that have some extra money coming out of town, putting it in a spot where it's just really not a great spot? Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Keith. Okay. All right, I'm looking through the screens here to see if we have any other hands raised. Okay. Seeing none, we will bring public comment to a close. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your thoughts. And next up is announcements from councilors and the mayor. Councilors, any announcements? Let me see if I have all the councilors on my screen here. Okay, I don't see any hands raised from the councilors. Charlene, are there any announcements from the mayor's office?
I know I have no announcement from the mayor.
Okay, and Pam, is Pam still around? I think she might have already. Pam is more than welcome to make her announcements around elections during our announcement time. So if she has anything else to share, I'd be happy to give her the floor again.
Well, thank you, Councilor Nash. I just wanted to also remind some folks that may be affected by this, but as a result of the 2020 election, we did redraw ward and precinct lines throughout the city. Those folks who were affected, postcards did go out last week letting people know about their new polling location, where it was located, and what new ward or precinct they may be in. If you didn't get a postcard and you have a question, you can certainly call the office and we'll confirm where your voting location is. But it's more than likely that if you didn't get a postcard, you're not affected by the change. A lot of folks, including former councilor Bill Dwight, got his postcard letting him know that he was now in a new precinct. So I was happy to hear that that we were getting the word out via the mail. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call. Thanks.
Thank you, Pam. I knew you had something extra good to say, so thank you. Any other announcements? Well, along that line, I just want to reiterate something that I've said before, that with the re-precincting, that in Ward 3, the folks on Island Road have now shifted over to Ward 4, and that I am committed to making sure that transition happens effectively for those folks, and that, for the time being, those constituents have two counselors, so to represent them, and working with Counselor Perry around representing those folks. Any other announcements? Okay. Oh.
Councilors Gore and Perry have their hands up.
Oh, I am sorry. Okay. Counselor Gore, you have the floor.
I just wanted to announce that the DHHS and the Department of Community Care are having an event. They're going to have a film screening on Wednesday, August 24th at the Academy of Music about stories of people of color across Western Mass and resilience. And they're gonna have a community meal in the park at 6 before the meeting. And there's gonna be a panel discussion. So anybody's open to the public and anybody's welcome to go.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Perry.
Hey, thank you so much. I just wanted to announce that there is going to be the first meeting of the Friends of Pulaski Park on Monday, August 22nd, between 4 and 5 p.m. It's going to be a Zoom meeting. I do not have a link for that, but Chief of Staff Alan Wolf is kind of spearheading this event, and the first meeting will be to discuss our first event in September. The plan is to do some initial cleanup, do some weeding, and generally do some upkeep for this great park that we have for our city.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay, any other announcements? Let's see, people are all over the place here. All right, I'm not seeing any hands raised. Okay, next up, we are on to presentations, and tonight we have a presentation from Finance Director Nardi, who is presenting the fourth quarter financial report, basically the end of year numbers for last fiscal year. And Director Nardi, you have the floor. And you'd also like to share your screen, correct?
Yes, yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I am, as Council President Nash said, I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see that? Yep. Is it large enough?
Recording stopped.
Okay. So
recording in progress.
Okay, thank you. You go ahead, Charlene.
So just as a overview, again, these are the same forms that you saw after the third quarter. So the sheet that I am looking at, if you're looking at it yourself, is called the FY 2022 Revenues General Fund. Overall, we ended the FY 2022 year on track. We met all of our overall budget projections by category. And again, I just want to remind people that because of the pandemic, we are still looking at two different metrics: how we did against our FY 22 budget projections, and secondly, how we are doing compared to our pre-pandemic years for those line items that were impacted. So as you can see, this is page 1. We're looking at our taxes and excises revenue, and looking at real estate and personal property taxes that came in at 97 and 99.2%. Those percentages are what is usually the area that we're in every year. Then if you look at our motor vehicle excise tax, wow, I wish I had lined these. It would be easier to point to, but as you can see, we brought in $2.9 million. Our budget was 2.2. So we are ahead of the budget by $704,000. The motor vehicle excise, if we look at that, here we are, sorry. I'm sorry, I just gave you motor vehicle excise. Yeah. So I apologize. Let's go back to taxes. So as you can see, $67 million we actually brought in for our taxes. Our budget is $68 million. We took in 99.2%. That is not uncommon. You don't generally see 100% at the year end. And as you may or may not know, the Treasurer's Department has a very structured process that they go through in order to work with homeowners to do their due diligence and make sure that we get all the taxes that we are entitled to receive. So then I apologize. Motor vehicle excise is 2.9 million. We budgeted at 2.2, and we brought in $100,000 over that. I don't feel like, looking at the past motor vehicle excise, that there was a big impact on that. I know people had difficulty getting cars, and that's still the case, but I feel like the motor vehicle excise revenue stayed pretty consistently up there. Hotel motel tax, looking at that, it was at 843,000 exceeded, and we're right here. Hotel Motel, $843,000, which exceeded the budget estimates and has significantly improved over the last fiscal year, which brought in only $286,000. So even this amount, this is more than what we brought in during FY19 and FY20. So Hotel Motel is looking very, very good. And based on the trend, I did increase the projection revenue for FY 2023. The next one that we normally talk about is meals tax, because that was impacted by COVID. We brought in 692,000, if you can see right here. And the amount we brought in over was 100. We brought in 138% of our projection, $192,000 more than our projection. The revenue collected in FY 2021 was about 214,000. So this is significantly higher than that. We're still higher than FY 2020 by about 22,000, but we're still lagging behind FY 19 by just under $75,000. The marijuana revenue, I'm sorry, adult marijuana. So if you look at this, our budget was 1.3, and then we reduced it to 1.1 million, and we only brought in $1.1 million. So we were about $7,000 short of our projected revenue. You know, while it's not a huge amount of money, the $7,000, this again highlights the decline we continue to see in our market share as more businesses open outside of the Northampton area. The best revenue years out of the past 4 years for marijuana revenue were FY20 at 1.6 million and FY 2021 at 1.3. So this continues to be a revenue that we need to look at and not rely on to the same degree we used to in the past. Pilots, the second half of this section here, the pilots, which are your payments in lieu of taxes. These amounts are estimated during the budget season and then invoiced during the year, which accounts for the slight differences you will see. For instance, you know, we budgeted 27,000, but we brought in for the pilot for the housing authority, but we brought in $27,028. So again, we budget for these in the spring and then I invoice them throughout the year, and that's why you see the differences. This particular one, all the pilots have been received. This one you will see it only says 50%. It's the landfill solar array. That payment did come in after June 30th, but we did receive it. So it will actually be posted as revenue for FY 2022. In looking at page 2, oops, sorry, I guess I gotta click down here and I'm gonna do a little more. So this part, which we're talking about parking revenues, as you can see here, this is actually the budget and the actual revenue are the same, and there's a reason for that. The reason for that is that the parking revenues must be exactly what we budgeted for to cover our expenses. For any accounts that come in under budget, funds are actually taken from our parking receipts reserved account to make the budget or the revenue whole or equal 100%. If a budget line in the parking, if in one of these 6 lines comes in under the budget projections, the budget projections, the excess revenue is then put into the parking receipts reserved account. So the process, so for instance, we budgeted 225. If it came in over, then the excess is put into another account. And if it comes in under, we have to take money from that account. So it meets the $100,000. And the reason you're seeing it like this is, let's see if I can get my other, geez Louise, Nardi. I need to move this, there we go. So what happened was the process of putting all the interest and revenue collections happens after June 30th. That is also the time that the treasurer's office and collector's office are getting out the real estate bills. So it's a very busy time for them. So I was waiting for them to get all the interest and revenues posted so that you could see them completely. But by the time I actually pulled and saved your report, which was on August 15th, the auditor had actually moved all of those amounts, like I told you, to make zeros. So that's why you were seeing the 100%, and you were saying no excess or no under. So this is actually a report that I had pulled and actually printed on July 26th. So I sent this sheet to you today just so you could actually see what the actual revenues were. As you can see, parking revenues was over 117. Parking lot revenues was under the budgeted amount. It only came in at 75%. Parking garage revenue came in much higher than expected at 152%. Parking pass revenue, 168%. And the kiosk credit cards came in only at 80%. So I just wanted you to look to actually see those amounts. But as I noted, the auditor makes the adjustments. Any excess goes into the receipts reserved, and we use those monies to support the budget and also to purchase vehicles for like the parking enforcement. And you saw that during the capital planning process. So that is all that's there. I'm going to go back to the other page because ambulance services here only is 2.823 million. And if we go back to the first one, you can see it's slightly higher. It's actually $2,831,000. So again, ambulance services continues to be a significant source of revenue, and it brought in 148% of our revenue projections. Charges for services and licenses and permits. This is the bottom page of page 2. You can see by looking at the last column again, this is your percentage. We want to make sure everything is at least 100%, or our ideal would be 100% or greater. So you can see most of these came in at budget. A few of them are a little bit lower, but if you look at the total of the category, 100.7% that came in. So we are pretty much on target there. Same with permits. We are at 116.5% of our actual budgeted. So this is our budget. This is what we brought in. The next one, this is federal revenue right here. The Medicaid reimbursement for schools. We generally budget this amount. We budget at 80,000. We budget it very conservatively because from year to year, we're not sure actually what we're going to get. So I definitely don't want to over budget and have that number come in much lower. So this year you can see it was much higher than anticipated. State revenues on page 4, also known as local aid. These are the state aid revenues. Most are part of the cherry sheet and are voted as part of the Massachusetts state budget. They come in as they come in, and they came in as expected. Veterans benefits was a little lower than we actually anticipated coming in, and that is, if you know, when we spend out veterans benefits, we get reimbursed 75% of what we spend. So that's the money coming back in, and it's not. It's there's a lag between what we spend and then what the money that we get back. And then looking at parking tickets, that next section here, parking tickets came in higher than budgeted, about $200,000 more than expected. And this is greater than the FY21 revenue that we received, but about the same as FY20. Still lower than what we received in FY 2019, which is before the pandemic, but there is a thought that this line will remain down because of a couple different reasons. Maybe because the world has changed a little bit, the way they work, So there's not as many cars that way, but also I think because we are also offering more conveniences for patrons who shop, dine, and visit and work in the downtown area, because we have Park Mobile. So hopefully we are receiving less tickets and just people paying in other ways. And then the last section under general fund revenues is the CMV one, which is just basically automobile law violation tickets. And again, we budget that, and looking at this was much lower. And I mean, kind of think that's a good thing that we're not giving out as many, or people hopefully are not violating laws as much. And then that is about it. This is also, as you can see, we're 185% greater. Interest on investments was greater than expected. Miscellaneous receipts, which is something you can't count on, so we don't budget for that. But as you can see, we took in $272,000 for miscellaneous receipts. And PVTA, the college reimbursement was a bit lower, which probably means that our ride share, the amount of rides that people have in Northampton, is lower as well. So that is it for the general fund revenues, unless somebody has a question for me.
Counselors, any questions? Director Nardi, I have one. Just in terms of recovering from the pandemic, numbers tend to be still below the 20, in particular areas, parking, meals, those revenues related to our downtown all tend to be down still, correct? In relation to 2019.
Yeah, with the exception of hotel motel, that actually looks good. That is actually seems to have bounced back. We're still a little bit lower in meals for compared to 2019. Mm-hmm. And we're only slightly lower in 2020. So I do think they're coming back. I think parking is lagging behind the other two.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So yes, and actually, so we're talking about FY22 and we're already living in FY23. So I just want everybody to know, when the mayor and I created the budget for FY23, we did push revenues more than you'll see here. So the projections you see here, we have already pushed them more. So although you're seeing some money, extra revenue that we took in, or revenue above projections, we have already tried to capture some of that and use it in the FY23 budget.
Thank you.
Councillor Nash, I have a question.
Oh, yes, Councillor Jarrett.
Thank you. So sorry if I missed this, but for the parking revenues, what was the total difference between the expected and the actual? Like if you added up all those line items.
Yes. So if you added them up, I believe it was 1.3 million. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to juggle being asked to look at it online and look at my sheets too. I apologize for, I guess I need practice at this.
No rush.
I did add them up. So yes, it was so our budget was 1.2 million and we brought in 1.3 million.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
Yeah. And do we receive, in terms of the cannabis tax revenue, do we receive that broken out by individual operators, or do we just get this was the total amount?
Correct. We do not get it broken out per business.
Okay. Thank you.
So moving on, I believe, find it. So sewer enterprise revenue. Actually, if you look at this, you will see, just going down the right-hand column, which we talked about before, what you're looking for is 100% or more, and really you want to look at the total categories. Overall, everything in the revenues are tracking as expected, and the overall budget projections were met. Revenues are generally stable in the enterprise funds. But since we are all aware that Coca-Cola is leaving, and I believe I saw DPW Director Lascalia, and I'm hoping she's still here. So I'm going to ask her to just speak to you about the water and sewer revenues and maybe what we can expect going forward in FY 2023. Director Lascalia, are you there?
Hi, I am. Hi, good evening. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Just a few words about the enterprise funds, water and sewer. So we really have enjoyed excellent revenue stability over really the past several years, even right through the pandemic. I mean, we saw a usage shift during the pandemic from businesses and institutions that were closed to residential users. So even throughout COVID, we really did have relatively stable overall revenue. And additionally, you know, we have stable expenses and we manage a very, very tight budget. And for those reasons, we have been able to enjoy several years of no rate adjustments. So as Director Nardi was saying, you know, if you look at the revenues that we pulled in last year, we always very conservatively budget our revenues because, you know, this is sort of a user-based system, and we need to be very careful to not overstate and thereby overspend. So I think it should really be stressed that we are very grateful to have both the revenue and expense stability that we have enjoyed over the past several years, but we're clearly operating in a little bit of a different scenario now with significant inflationary pressures that have not been seen in the recent past, as well as with the pending closure of Coca-Cola. So hopefully those comments are helpful, and happy to take questions if there are any.
Director, I have a question.
Sure, Council, go ahead.
Yeah. So is there a reserve fund that we have for water and sewer that will cushion us in terms of if we're not able to replace that revenue from Coca-Cola?
So, and just to clarify what the potential impact of Coca-Cola will be, you know, in communications with them, they're not looking to transfer ownership of the building to like a different bottler. Coca-Cola is completely ending their Northampton operations, and they are looking to sell the building. So what they suggest to us is that they will have a ramp down of their operations that we will likely start to see as the weather gets a little colder, so sort of late fall, winter, and then that ramp down will increase throughout the winter and into next spring. Your question about the reserves, we have stabilization funds in both water and sewer that you know, are generally meant to be sort of safety nets for us in the event that we have infrastructure needs that exceed our budget capabilities. So if we were to have some sort of infrastructure disaster, which had a significant price tag, that's generally what the stabilization fund is used for, or to sort of cushion the impact of large capital projects. You know, philosophically, I think that would be a conversation about what the future use of these stabilization funds should be. But to be clear, we are looking at nearly 25% of our water revenue going away with Coca-Cola. So they are roughly $1.8 million of revenue in a $5.9 million enterprise for water, and they're roughly 21% of sewer. So that's about $1.3 million and like $5.7 million in sewer. These are massive, massive impacts. You're talking about, you know, a quarter of the revenue of both enterprises leaving. And that is something that even stabilization is not a long-term solution for.
Right. Thank you for that sobering assessment. I just had another question about sludge disposal as a revenue. Is that something we get paid for, or I had been under the impression that was something that we paid to dispose of?
Yes, it's actually both ways. So sludge, the sludge disposal you see on the revenue side is folks who pump their septic systems out. We receive that sewage and we treat it in the plant, and then we bill for it. The sludge that we generate at the plant as a result of our treatment is an expense for us that runs through our filter presses and actually turns into a solid. I think you folks saw that on the tour, and that's something that we truck off and incinerate. So it's an expense. So it's just the way the accounts are named in our financial accounting system. So a more accurate assessment of that would be sewage disposal. And again, that's just the sewage we take in from private septic haulers.
Great. Thank you for that clarification.
Counselors, I can't see you all in this format, so feel free to just hop in if you have questions. Oh, there you are. But we've lost the spreadsheets.
I will bring them back up as soon as you're ready to move on.
Okay, well, it looks like everybody's good. And Counselor Jarrett, I had the same question earlier with Director Nardi about that, how we're making money off of disposing of waste. So, okay, seeing no further questions, you may proceed, Director Nardi.
Thank you. So I am going to again share my screen. Bear with me. So this next report is the FY 2022 expenses for the general fund. When you're looking at this report, again, I'll remind you that each department has a PS, which is their salary lines, and an OM, which is their expenses. And if, again, you move all the way to the right of your report, looking down, you want to see, in this case, we want to see 100% or less. We do not want to see numbers over 100% because these are our expenses. So looking down each column, if you do a real quick, you should see that everything is either at 100% or a little bit under. You will also, I just want to bring your attention, because we're at year end, unlike the other quarters, you're also going to see this encumbrance, which is normally zeros all the way in here. You're going to see an encumbrance line, and this is money that was held over from FY22 because of a project that was either contracted and we're still in the process of doing the work and paying the bills, or we purchased something, maybe like a car, we put it in order for our vehicle. If there was such a thing in one of their budgets and then we haven't received it yet, or we purchased something else and we haven't received it. So this encumbrance line, if you look down, each department has held money over for work that was contracted for or is still in the process of, but it started in FY 2022, because generally you can't hold money from year to year within your budget. So I don't have a lot to talk about here, unless when you looked at this, if you had a chance to look at it before the meeting, if you had specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. But if you go to the bottom, and forgive me if this sometimes makes me not feel well if I do it. If I'm looking at somebody's screen, it makes me feel ill. So I'm trying, whoops, too far. So if you look at this at the end of the report, you're going to see that out of our budgets, we are returning $1.6 million. And that's being turned back, and which that means is it'll become part of our free cash, our FY 2023 free cash. And generally, I think we've talked about this before in the presentation, good financial practice and a healthy financial budget is recommended to create 3 to 5% free cash. 3 to 5% of your general operating budget becomes free cash. So, this is part of that free cash that we will have. And I don't know if anybody wants to talk specifically about any particular thing that's on this report.
Yeah. Director, I have a question. So the community care, thank you for explaining what encumbrances are. I know there was a vehicle that was purchased, but the amount of encumbrances is 241,000. I was curious what I assume the vehicle didn't cost that much.
Where were we? What was it where I was talking about?
Yeah, under the community care department.
Oh, the department. So that was actually, so yes, here, this whole amount here was actually reserved not just for the vehicle. It was actually a lot of their budget was held over to do a lot of the contractual work and training that we didn't have the opportunity to do during FY 2022, and Commissioner O'Leary started that and contracted. So before June 30th, she put contracts in place and used that money. In order to encumber it, you actually have a use for it. You can't just hold it for a future use. So she actually worked very hard to get the DCC up and running and to start making contracts for work that would occur in FY 2023, but contracts were made in FY 2022. But for specifics on each of those, you know, what they were, I can give you more details. I don't have that with me tonight, but I'm certainly willing to share that, you know, get that information to you.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just happy with that explanation. Thank you. And then the schools they aren't listed in this report, right?
No.
But how does that? But they are listed. I mean, our revenue includes that amount. So, including the amounts for the schools, how do things look?
So our school. So the money that the Northampton Public Schools get is not money that comes back to us. They encumber their money and use it for their uses. So the city does not see a return of that money. So you don't see revenue. The only revenue you see for schools is Smith Voc, and it's a pass through. So when you saw actually on the revenue sheet, if you want me to go to that, it shows actually on page 2, which is missing. Let me go to the other page 2. And this thing is like right in my way. I can't see the. There we go. I think it's the last page here. Back up. So if you look here, so you see Smith Voc tuition, $7 million. They actually received $8 million. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So that is actually a pass through. That money goes to them, and it stays with them because it's part of their tuition. And I think, remember when I came to you and I asked for an additional student for you actually to appropriate that money? So in this case, they were not allowed to use that extra money because it's just a pass through. It wasn't appropriated to them. We only appropriated $7.7 million to them. So that was one of the reasons they would ask in the beginning if they know of new students to actually appropriate it. But so that money isn't ours. It doesn't stay with us for revenue.
Okay. So the amount that we budget for them is the amount. And then if they underspend, they keep that for their use in the future.
Right. So especially for Smith Voc, that's tuition from other communities. We give them our portion, but the extra, these larger amounts is for tuition. That's just a pass through the city. So actually, if I may, one more step is go back to our page 2 here in the report that I did the second time or later. You'll see it's a 0. So if you look here where my cursor is, that is done the same thing that parking. You'll see there's no revenue, extra revenue remaining. Yet you saw they got $8 million. That money is sent to Smith Voc and put in there. NPS again, same thing. Generally schools don't have extra money left over. They use all of it, and NPS doesn't show up as revenue because we don't take in revenue for them. It's an expense. And actually, we give Smith Voc their money up front, and they have their own accounting system, and they account for that to their school committee. It's not something my office tracks.
Thank you.
So unless there are other questions, I thought I saw Councilor Labarge.
Thank you. I have a question. If I recall, I think it was about a year ago, and there was a tremendous amount of residences, properties here in the city of Northampton that there was municipal liens on the property. How are we doing with that? Are we starting to get some money back? Because that was a huge amount of residents who really had a bad time.
So I honestly have not heard of that in the past. Talking with the treasurer collector, she, even last year, I didn't feel like there was a lot of people who were not paying their taxes, not any more than she expected. There is a process. So for people who haven't paid their taxes, starting in the spring of next year, and I think they reach out before that becomes the official process where they get a formal letter saying that they didn't pay like their FY22 taxes. That will happen in the spring of FY 2023. However, I think unofficially her department reaches out sooner than that, but officially they start in the spring. But I do believe they've worked really hard to bring those down, working with homeowners. They can work with them to start payment plans if they before it all goes into tax title.
Oh, great. Okay, because I was really concerned knowing with the COVID and so forth, how it really affected so many people in our city, because the amount was phenomenal in the paper. I'm glad to hear that, you know, something was put in place and helping everybody out. Thank you.
Director Nardi, I have a question. Back on Department of Community Care, I'm actually interested in the other budget line there, the salary line, where less than half of what was budgeted was spent. There was only one position in that department, correct?
Yes.
So what's the explanation for the fact that only 42% was spent?
So actually the director was not hired until I believe January is when the Sean started. Only half the salary or less than half the salary was spent because of the timing of which that individual was hired.
Okay.
Well, thank you. If there's no other questions, I want to thank you very much for your time. I hope that was helpful. And if in the future, if there's things that I can do to make it easier to view it or better explanations, please don't hesitate to let me know.
Thank you, Charlene.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Director Nardi. And I appreciated you using the cursor under each line as you were talking about
that was excellent.
All right, well, I'll try to get better at that so I can talk, and apparently I can't walk and chew gum.
I bet you can. Okay, thank you. All right. Back to the agenda. How are counselors doing? Do we need a quick break or?
Yes, could we have a 5-minute break, please?
Let's do a 5-minute break. We will reconvene at 8:36.
Thank you.
Okay. We have the minutes of the June 16th, 2022 and July 14th, 2022 regular city council meetings, and the June 23rd, 2022 and the June 30th, 2022 special meetings. We have item 22.094, National Grid poll petition to install 5 poles and remove 7. That was discussed in the public hearing earlier. We have 22.136, appointments to various committees, all positive recommendations from city services. We have for the Arts Council, we have Eamon Edge. For the Board of Registrars, we have Robert Bullrice. We have item 22.142, appointment of Kim Park as Senior Services Director. Positive recommendation from City Services Committee. We have item 22.144, appointments to various committees, all positive recommendations from City Services Committee. We have for the Historical Commission, Dylan Gaffney, Parks and Recreation Commission, Jeffrey Dawson, Planning Board, Jana White, Zoning Board of Appeals, Elizabeth Silver. Item 22.146, in order to appropriate funds for additional Smith vocational students. Director Nardi was referencing that during her presentation. We have item 22.147, in order to authorize FY 2023 intermunicipal agreements. We have item 22.148, in order authorizing changes to public health nursing revolving fund. We have item 22.160, appointments to various committees for referral to city services. I'm just going to read the names: Sean Sullivan, Janet Grant, Beverly Bates, Greg DeBrindisi, Diana Stallone, and Angela D'Souza, and Thomas Dunphy. And last, we have item 22.162, appointment of Carolyn Mish as Director of the Office of Planning and Sustainability for referral to city services. Are there any requests for removals? Councillor Foster.
Yes, I'd like to remove D 22.142, appointment of Kim Park as Senior Services Director.
Okay, we will remove that. Any other removals from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing no other removals, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councillor Moulton and I think seconded by Councillor Elkins. Did I get it right? Okay. There's no discussion on the consent agenda. Laura, roll call, please.
Councillor Gore.
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett.
Yes.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Councillor Moulton.
Yes.
Councillor Nash.
Yes.
Councillor Perry.
Yes.
Councillor Elkins.
Yes.
And Councillor Foster.
Yes.
Okay, the consent agenda has passed. We still have item 22.142, appointment of Kim Park as Senior Services Director. Councillor Foster, would you like to speak to this?
Sure. I just want to say I do intend to support this. I just wanted to remove it from the consent agenda because in recognition of the importance of the Senior Services Director. City Services Committee had a chance to meet with Kimberly Park a couple of weeks ago. I know there was a search for a replacement, and I am excited that Kim Park will be appointed to this position. And I just wanted to recognize the importance of the Senior Services Director and not let that pass through the consent agenda without a quick comment and a warm welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Foster. Any other thoughts on this before we consider a motion? Okay, a motion, I'll entertain a motion to approve this.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Foster. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Laura, roll call, please.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
and Counselor Gore.
Yes.
Okay, we have a senior services director. Yay. Okay, next up, financial orders on first reading. We have item 22.154, in order to reprogram funds for Forbes Library Restroom Ventilation Project. In order to reprogram funds, the following funds totaling $8,351.49 be reprogrammed from completed projects into new account for the Forbes Restroom Ventilation Project, $3,939.24 from Forbes Windows, $1,875.25 from Recreation Field Roof Project, and $2,537 from the Senior Center Exterior Paint Project. Director Nardi, I think is still here. Where is she?
Yes,
Oh, good. I hear her yelling. Okay.
I didn't mean to yell.
No, that's fine. So, a little background or?
Director McCarthy would like to reprogram. These are all extra funds from projects that have been completed. These are funds that he can use to move forward the Forbes restroom ventilation project, which Forbes Library is very anxious to get started. These would be used along with the remaining $3,266 from the borrowed funds, which are part of the Forbes HVAC project. It would give him a total of $11,617 to address the ventilation issues. He plans to hire an engineering firm to do the design, which is going to cost an estimated $6,800. The remaining balance will be put towards the project as part of a capital improvement submission for FY 2023.
Thank you. Okay. Counselors, so this is a financial order. We can send it to the consent agenda, or we can send it to the Finance Committee. One note, as we can consider these financial orders, Finance Chair Maori sent a communication to me, Councilor Foster, and Laura with her regrets for not being here, but she also shared that her thoughts on the financial orders for first reading, that they did not meet the standard to go to finance, and I'm sharing that information with you guys now.
I'll move that we refer this to consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Moulton, seconded by Councilor Labarge to send 22.154 to the consent agenda. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none. Laura, roll call, please.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett.
Yes.
Okay, that item will be on our next consent agenda at our next meeting. Next up, 22.155, in order to reprogram funds to replace hot water heater at Bridge Street School. This is in first reading. Ordered that the remaining $14,350 in the Northampton High School boiler replacement account be reprogrammed to replace a failed hot water heater at Bridge Street School. And there was a request that for 2 readings, or that we approve this tonight.
Yes.
Director Nardi, you want to speak to this?
So yes, so Supervisor of School Maintenance Tony Kuzniers has requested that we reprogram the funds that are left over from the completion of the Northampton High School boiler replacement project and use those funds to replace a hot water heater at Bridge Street School that recently failed this summer. At this time, they have no hot water in the building. Or at the time that we first discussed this, there was no hot water in the building, and he needs these funds to actually cover the cost of the replacement.
Counselors, any questions?
No, I would like to suspend the rule.
Second,
Okay. Oh, all right. That's right. We don't need to do a first reading. Yes. Okay. So motion to suspend the rule is made by Counselor Labarge and seconded by Counselor Moulton. Any discussion of suspending the rule? Okay, Laura, roll call, please.
Counselor Moulton,
yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
and Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay, so this item is now up for approval this evening. I will entertain a motion to approve 22.155.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Counselor Labarge, and I'm going to give the second to Counselor Perry. And any discussion? I just want to say that that when I first saw this, I called Director Nardi and said, "We're not waiting around to fix this, are we?" So the school department is actively working on this project. We are approving the funds to finance it, but they are not waiting for us to approve this order tonight. But they do need the funds to get this project done. Correct, Director Nardi?
Yes, and I also want to thank you because you motivated me. I actually was asking him to wait, and you made me think about other ways that we could do this so that they could move forward much quicker. And yes, so your approval tonight will allow us to move any expenses that have already occurred out of their budget and into the funds here.
Yay.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. More effective city government. I love it.
Yes.
Okay, so any further discussion? Seeing none. Laura, roll call, please.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
and Counselor Moulton.
Yes.
Okay. The order to reprogram funds to replace a hot water heater at Bridge Street School have been approved. Next up, item 22.156, in order to reprogram funds to upgrade JFK bleachers. This is in first reading, and did I see a request for 2 readings? So we're going to want to, there's a request to suspend our rules. Ordered that $10,000 in JFK main lobby security upgrade account be reprogrammed to upgrade the bleachers. Director Nardi, you want to speak to this?
Sure. Again, Supervisor of School Maintenance, Tony Kuzners, requested that we reprogram these funds. These funds have been sitting since 2018. They were originally for the design of security measures in the lobby of the JFK school. They've been sitting there since FY 2018. I think initial looking at the project that they plan to do was not feasible. So again, he would like to use these funds that have been sitting for about 5 years for the purposes of upgrades that he has just been made aware that needs to be done to the JFK bleachers.
Thank you. I'd like to suspend the rule, please.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Counselor Labarge, seconded by Counselor Jarrett. Any discussion on suspending the rule? Hearing none. Laura, roll call, please.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
and Counselor Nash.
Yes. Okay, we have suspended the rule. This item 22.156 is up for approval this evening. I'll entertain a motion
To approve.
to approve.
Second.
Oh, okay. So Counselor Labarge has made the motion to approve, seconded by Counselor Moulton. Any discussion on this? I have a quick question, Director Nardi. So you're saying that there was a plan to upgrade security in the lobby that did not come to fruition, and the money's been sitting there?
So yes, I can read you exactly what I was told. This was an old project from 2 principals ago. And after some preliminary work, it was determined that what they wanted to accomplish was not feasible. It was for engineering work and redesign of the entire front lobby and entrance. This $10,000 has been sitting there since FY 2018.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's not that we certainly, if there's need, that we can look at that, but I think whatever they were looking at that time, it was determined that it wasn't feasible. And I don't think this $10,000 would be enough in any event.
Okay. Thank you. Counselor Moulton.
Well, just to follow up, you're not aware, Director Nardi, that anyone in the school department is concerned about security issues at JFK?
I have not heard anything myself, no.
Okay.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay, Laura, roll call on approving 22.156.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
and Counselor Perry.
Yes.
Okay, 22.156 has been approved this evening. Next up, 22.161, in order to appropriate FY 2023 CPA funds for community preservation purposes. This is in first reading. I'm not going to read all of this. Counselors have had a chance to look this over. Director Nardi, could you speak to this?
So I know Sarah LaValle has submitted also, if you had a chance to read her explanation of how this works. So basically what we're doing is we're appropriating the Community Preservation Act funds for the year that will be used for projects. So the first way we go about doing that is we take what is estimated, the local estimate, and we multiply that by proposition 2.5, your 2.5%, and then we take 3% of our expected or budgeted new growth, which is $650,000, and we add those together, and that gives us our $2,298,518. So that's the amount we have in which to use for projects to begin with. Then we take 11% of that for each of the reserve funds, which she mentions, which is the Community Preservation Fund Historic Preservation Reserve, And then the Affordable Housing Reserve and the administration, excuse me, I jumped down one. Affordable housing, historic preservation, and open space, excuse me. So we take 11% of that total amount and we set it aside to make sure we have enough for projects that are within those categories. The next piece, we take $75,000 for administrative oversight of this program. And then we also allocate 1.4 million for the budgeted reserve account. Out of that $1.4 million, we pay the FY23 debt, which is the amounts that are listed at the bottom there. The $54,000 in principal and interest for the bean farm bond. So again, when we borrow, some of the money for projects are being paid with Community Preservation Act funds. And for FY23, these are the costs. So if you actually look at that amount, so about $237,693, which are the last three things in your order here, the $54,000, the $90,000, the $60,000 plus interest. We take that out of the $1.4 million, and that leaves out of the total $1.9 million set aside in reserves to be used for projects in FY 2023. So what you're being asked to do is to appropriate that money, and then later in the year, you will see an order for individual projects of the planning and sustainability group spending that money for specific projects.
Thank you. That was a great explanation.
Thank you.
So this is in first reading. So, and there's no need to approve this tonight. So we're considering whether or not to send this to the consent agenda or to send it to finance. Councilor Labarge.
Yes, before I place my vote, I just want to thank Chardine, our financial director, and also the Community Preservation Committee. This is a serious committee, and I want to thank them tirelessly working to make this budget. It is not happening overnight. As long as I've been a counselor, they have done such an excellent job. So I am making a motion to move this to the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion to send this item to the consent agenda has been made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Moulton. Any further discussion on 22.161? Councilor Jarrett.
Thank you. Charlene, do you know, Director Nardi, do you know how the state match has changed over the years? How does this 702,000 or 35% compare to previous years?
Honestly, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if I was unmuted. I'm sorry, Councilor Jarrett. I don't know enough about it to speak to how that's changed over the years. I know in speaking with Sarah, she did say it's an estimate. Generally, they're not sure each year what the percentage will be. And the 44% state match that we calculated, I think that's what she said in her report, is an estimate. So I'm sorry, I can't speak. I can get you that information though. I'm happy to get that to you.
Great, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have a motion to send this to the consent agenda on the floor. Any further discussion? Laura, roll call, please.
Councilor Foster,
Yes.
Councilor Gore,
Yes.
Councilor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes,
Councilor Moulton,
Yes.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Perry,
Yes.
and Councilor Elkins.
Yes.
Okay, 22.161 has been sent to the consent agenda, and that will be up for approval at our next meeting. Now we are up to orders. We have the first one is in second reading. I would just want to recognize the mayor is in the room. Hello, Mayor. Welcome. Do you have any announcements, Mayor, that you want to make? She's muted.
I'm
She'd
making.
like to
her up.
announce she's muted, I think.
Yes, here we
Okay.
go. No longer.
Did I just mute you again?
Yeah, okay, I'm good. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Counselors, I'm so sorry to be so late. I'm trying to be in two places at once. So it's good to see you all. I haven't seen you in a while. Actually, the only announcement I had relates to the next order, which, since you've already had this on your agenda, this is the second reading, you know about this, but if you want to introduce it, I'd just be happy to talk it up a little bit.
Okay. Next on the agenda is item 22.150, in order to temporarily suspending City of Northampton Ordinance 285-4, permit to display merchandise on streets required. Boy, who wrote this? Mobile food vehicles on September 10th, 2022, in support of the Taste of Northampton event. This is in second reading, and I'll just let the mayor speak to it.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's in second reading, so you've heard about this already, but I just wanted to just enthusiastically share that the Taste of Northampton is back. We're really excited about it. I want to give great thanks to Alan Wolf and Annie Lesko, who do economic development and really worked hard to get funding to bring the Taste back, and have been working tirelessly with Amy and the DNA to bring this back and to help really support the restaurants by bringing awareness and getting everyone to their food and to enjoy them, but also by providing some funding for them as well. So we're just really excited that that we're having the Taste of Northampton again. And I thank the council so much for supporting it and getting the word out, and also for supporting this order, which helps us to support our brick and mortar restaurants that have sort of mobile units as well, and be able to be part of it that way. So thank you so much for being there and enjoying it. And I hope you're as excited as I am.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other comments on this before we entertain a motion to approve? I will entertain a motion. Oh my gosh, everybody. So
Second.
yeah, so Councillor Labarge was lit up, and then there was a bunch of noise, and then Councillor Elkins. So we'll go with that. So
That's right.
yeah. All right. Okay, so any more discussion on 22.150? Hearing none. Laura, roll call, please.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
and Counselor Foster.
Yes.
Okay. 22.150 has been approved. We're going to have a taste. Yay.
Yay.
All right, next up, 22.151, in order authorizing acceptance of a local preservation restriction for 130 Pine Street in Florence. This is in first reading, and I'm going to invite Carolyn in because whether we're going to proceed on this or a later item depends on what she's found out. Carolyn, you have the floor. What's up?
Good evening, counselors. It's nice to be here. So the order in front of you relates to the zoning package and historic preservation restriction that's later on in the agenda. But this is an administrative and procedural item because the city can't accept a grant of a historic preservation restriction without the city council allowing the acceptance of that. So this is merely to set the stage for accepting an historic preservation restriction at 130 Pine Street, which is has been part of the discussion around the rezoning of that parcel to allow activities at the Florence Congregational Church, which is located at 130 Pine Street and is the subject of this historic preservation restriction, this historic church being part of that. So this is really just an order that needs to be accepted. You can, I know you asked about the other items coming forward. We are still missing a final piece of documentation to be able to really move the entire packet forward. So whether or not you vote to suspend rules to vote on this for 2 readings tonight, or you just do your sequential readings, sort of doesn't make a difference because I think you're going to have to put the whole package off till September 1st anyway, but we can talk about that the next item if you'd like.
So, so you're going to ask for us to table the later item till our next meeting, and that the request was to suspend the rule for tonight because it looked like we were going to approve that later item tonight. But if it looks like we can move forward with this at our normal pace, which is this would be in first reading, it would be in second reading at our next meeting, and hopefully that'll line up with the other item at that meeting as well. Okay, so thank you for clarifying that because now I know what to do. All right, so this item is in first reading, and I think that we are going to overlook the request for 2 readings tonight.
Yes.
And that, so we have 22.151, in order authorizing acceptance of a local preservation restriction for 130 Pine Street in Florence. And Carolyn, would you like to speak to this? So we're going about this. This is an introduction of this item that will be up for approval at our next meeting. Or did you already do that?
Well, how about this? Are there any questions about, do you want me to read through it, or do you have questions about the order? It's really, again, just to accept a preservation restriction from a private party. And so the city, it can't go to record without the city council first accepting this, such a restriction on a piece of property, because it deals with real property.
I don't think counselors want me to read it. And I'm not seeing questions. So I think we've properly introduced this. Does that seem correct, counselors?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think we're good on this, Carolyn, that we understand because we've had this has been part of the discussions all along with this particular property and the rezoning, and so so I think we've done our job for first reading on this. Okay, and seeing no hands, that means that's true. All right, and so Carolyn, this means that the item later, you're going to ask that we table that till our next meeting.
Right, and when we get to that, I can explain the reasons behind that.
Do you want to do that now? We could just take it out of order real quick.
Absolutely, if that's what you.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yep.
We're talking about the whole thing.
Okay. So if you recall, there were this item for rezoning was introduced, and at the last meeting, there was a discussion about two items that were missing. One was this order to accept an historic preservation restriction, and the other was to get a sign off for the historic preservation restriction and title certification, showing that the title for this property was free and clear of encumbrances, so that in fact, with this restriction, the restriction would be the first item essentially on the title. So we're Bombix, who was trying to get this title certification, couldn't get it until just at the end of last week. So we're reviewing it. It turns out there is a small loan on the property. And so what needs to happen is that that loan has to be subordinated behind this historic preservation restriction. We've just gotten information today to say that the lender has no problem and has written a letter to that effect, that they don't have a problem allowing the historic preservation to sort of come up first on the title, and so that the loan is behind that. And that means that that will stand no matter, what other financial obligations are required to be fulfilled. However, we don't have that final legal form of that subordination agreement. So that's the last piece that has to be addressed. I've had a conversation with Solicitor Seawald this evening about that, and about the ability to do that for your next meeting, which is September 1st, I believe. It's just 2 weeks. He has made himself available to write that formal legal document so that the parties can sign it and it can be ready to move forward. So that's really the final piece, is now that subordination of that loan. And for those reasons, this isn't it. We wouldn't recommend that you adopt the zoning, because the zoning is tied to a condition that an historic preservation restriction be placed on the property. And so since we can't place that on the property until we see that it's been free and clear and that the loan is subordinated, then it doesn't make sense to vote on the zoning yet.
Thank you, Carolyn. Okay, so to summarize, the earlier item 22.151, the preservation restriction, will be on our September 1st agenda for second reading. And this item, which we've been discussing, which is 22.10110. Where'd you go here? There it is. An ordinance to rezone 130 Pine Street from URB to office industrial. That we will table until the September 1st meeting, and they will be up for a discussion and approval then. So, okay. So I think, Carolyn, is there anything else on here? Let me see, that we need you around for? Parking meters, zoning map. Oh yeah, you got to stick around. Prince Street. Okay, next up.
Sorry, Councilor
yes,
Nash, do we need to do a move to continue it, or can it just point of order?
Vote on this.
So Laura, do we need to vote, or?
I don't think so. I think you're just not taking action, and it'll be placed on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, great question. Thank you. Okay, next up is item 22.153, a warrant for September 6, 2022 state primary election. This is in first reading, and the request is that we suspend the rule and approve this tonight. Is Pam here? Pam is here. And you know what? Since it has to do with polling, I'm going to do a lot of reading here. Let's see. Upon the recommendation of City Clerk Pamela L. Powers, ordered that meetings of the members of the Democratic and Republican Party in the city of Northampton qualified to vote will be held on Tuesday, September 6, 2022, in the several polling places designated for the purpose by the City Council as follows. Ward 1, Precinct A in Jackson Street School. Ward 1, Precinct B in Jackson Street School. Ward 2, Precinct A, Smith Vocational in Building B. Ward 2, Precinct B in Smith Vocational Ag High School, Building B. Ward 3, Precinct A in the Senior Center in the Great Room. Ward 3B in the Senior Center in the Great Room. Ward 4, Precinct A in the Senior Center in Patty's Front Room. Ward 4, Precinct B in the Senior Center Activity Room number 1. Ward 5, Precinct A in Florence Civic and Business Building, 90 Park Street. Ward 5, Precinct B in Smith Vocational Agricultural High School Gymnasium, Building B. Ward 6, Precinct A in Robert K. Finn Ryan Road School Gymnasium. Ward 6, Precinct B, also at Ryan Road. Ward 7, Precinct A at JFK Middle School. Ward 7, Precinct B in Leeds Gymnasium, lower level. The polls will be opened at 7 o'clock in the forenoon and closed at 8 o'clock in the evening of the said day, and all such members will, in the wards in which they are entitled to vote between said hours, give in their votes for the candidates of political parties for the following offices. It sounds just like Pam, the way she talks. Governor for this Commonwealth, Lieutenant Governor for this Commonwealth, Attorney General, Secretary of State, Treasurer, Auditor, Representative in Congress for the 2nd Congressional District, Counselor for the 8th District, Senator in General Court for Hampshire, Franklin, and Worcester District, Representative in General Court for the 1st Hampshire District, District Attorney for the Northwestern District, Sheriff for Hampshire County. Pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 54, Section 72, ordered that the city clerk shall detail no fewer than 1 constable for each precinct located in polling place, no fewer than 1 police officer in each polling location in a school building when school is in session, and in consultation with the chief of police, shall detail such other staff as may be necessary and prudent to assure a safe and orderly election in accordance with state and local laws relating to elections. So that is the warrant for the election that is before us. Pam, do you have anything else you'd like to share about this?
Just wanted to ask that City Council do 2 readings tonight, because obviously by the time you have your next meeting, the election will be over. So I do need to ask you to, is that true?
No, but it'd probably be good to get it done sooner, because it would be the 1st in the old.
Oh, your next meeting is the 1st. Okay,
Yeah.
well, it doesn't require 2 readings. But if you're so inclined to do so, I certainly would appreciate it to get it posted where I need to post it. So it's totally up to the council.
Okay, thank you. All right, counselors, any discussion on whether or not about this election?
I'll move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Counselor Moulton and seconded by Counselor Jarrett to suspend the rule for approval this evening. Any discussion on suspending the rule? Hearing none. Laura, roll call on suspending the rule.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
and Counselor Gore.
Yes.
Okay. So the rule has been suspended. This item is up for approval this evening. I would entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second. Counselor Labarge made the motion and, who did the second? Who was it? Who wants it?
Counselor Perry and I both did. Why don't you give it to Counselor Perry?
Okay, Counselor Perry. All right. All right. Any discussion on approving the warrant tonight? All right, seeing none. Laura, roll call, please.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
and Counselor Jarrett.
Yes.
Okay, we will have an election on September 6th. All right, next up, let's see. We have an ordinance to amend section 312-36 parking meter locations and regulations. And Laura, so what's been sent to us here, it's not clear who's sponsoring it. So is this coming out of, and it's also for it. So this would be referred to a committee before we consider it, right?
Yeah, I know Carolyn's prepared to speak to it, and it.
Oh, okay.
TPC.
It's just, it's not clear who's sponsoring it, and
it does need a cover page.
And it was at
be added.
TPC on Tuesday. Isn't that
Right.
correct, Counselor Gore? So, okay, so what are we doing with this and what is it?
So I can speak to this ordinance. It's not, I don't usually work on the details of parking management. However, you all may recall that there's been quite a bit of conversation about parking in downtown and potential of restructuring it. This has come up in the Picture Main Street project. Concerns about not having enough parking, how much the parking costs, what will we do to encourage, to allow parking. There's been conversation about turnover of parking and so forth. And that led to earlier this spring, we rehired a stand tech to evaluate Jason Schreiber, who had done an initial evaluation several years ago about our parking system, came back and sort of did a refresh post-COVID, but also several years after some recommendations had already been implemented. And so through that process, Stantec proceeded with several recommendations for modifications, and there were public forums this spring that with the downtown businesses through assistance with the DNA and counselors to get feedback on the recommendations coming out of this report. And so there was strong support from the business community to move ahead with some of these actions so that we could test some of these modifications sooner than later. And so essentially what's in front of you is a whole packet of changes for a few sections in the code that deal with parking management, and the parking rates. And so essentially what it does is there's a shift in time for the proposed parking fee structure to be managed. So you'll see in the text that currently the parking meters start running and are enforced from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So there was a recommendation to shift that by 2 hours. So there's a time shift. There's an elimination of 2-hour maximums on Main Street and other zones to basically utilize different metrics of accomplishing turnover and evaluating occupancy of the parking spaces on Main Street. And 3, there's an adjustment in the actual rates so that goal of creating 85% occupancy can be met through adjusting rates on Main Street, increasing the rates on Main Street, but decreasing rates on the side streets to try to create an incentive for people to park who are going to be long-term occupants, maybe to park around the corners there as opposed to Main Street. It also introduces an authority for the mayor to adjust the rates based on the metrics in order to meet 85% occupancy on Main Street. So that instead of having to come back through ordinance to tweak the actual fee, that could be done as at more of an administrative level, but with feedback from Transportation and Parking Committee, and that also would establish sort of a semi-annual feedback about how the system is functioning in the summer and also in the winter season. And then there's a reorganization component that adjusts the sections and also brings in the roundhouse parking lot into the system since it's been reconfigured and those spaces have changed, and there's been some adjustment over the years with the type of the zone that has been classified, but it hasn't really been codified. So those are sort of the 5 main points of the changes in front of you. And I can walk through the very specific items if you would like, and just detail the text if you wanted that.
Well, I'm also thinking that this is definitely going to go to legislative matters,
right?
And there may be another committee that's interested, maybe community resources, or what would this? But this would be city services, right?
And I'm sorry, I would also like to say that it did go to Transportation and Parking on Tuesday, just sort of as an FYI. This is coming, but they knew that it would be going through this other public process, so they didn't act on it or make any recommendations or feel like they necessarily had to go through their process before going to council.
So they are passing on weighing in on this, or?
Yeah, they felt, I think my read was that they felt that because it was going to go to legislative matters and they've been part of this process of talking about sort of restructuring parking, that I think there was a level of comfort that knowing that it had this other process anyway.
Okay.
Sure.
So, councilors, thoughts on how to proceed here? I mean, I expect that Carolyn's going to be doing another presentation of this at Legislative Matters, and are there other committees we think we might want to have this go to? Councilor Foster.
I guess I have a question, and then I was unfortunately out of town on Tuesday and not able to make the Transportation and Parking Commission meeting. But Carolyn, something that I'm wondering might really help to explain this proposal would be a parking map with the changes proposed on the map. I'm concerned that it will be really, really hard for people to truly understand this without that. So I guess that's a question to request to see if something like that would be possible as this moves through. And then I understand it's going to legislative matters. My instinct, Councilor Gore, you were there on Tuesday. My instinct would be to also refer this to Transportation and Parking, but I wasn't there for the discussions. So I
think it would be a good idea to to give it to transportation and parking because we had an introduction to it. We didn't really have a discussion about it at all.
Makes sense. Yep.
So then my sense as chair of city services, if it's going to legislative matters and transportation and parking, I'm comfortable with that, unless any other members of city services wanted to see it come there as well.
Okay. I hearing nobody else weighing in, I'll say that, yeah, that's two other public meetings for people to show up and comment on this. And that, I'm satisfied with the overview that Carolyn gave us tonight, with the idea that she's going to have to do this again, and that at these other venues. So, and people can get more details then. Mayor.
I actually have a question for Carolyn. Carolyn, is the meeting with Jason from the spring, is that available on planning's website? I'm sorry, I should have just checked myself.
Last I knew it was. I will double check, but I know we had it up there and it may have moved. It's definitely there. And I will check as we continue to talk.
Maybe we can just make it easily findable. I feel like that would be, I thought that was a really great meeting and had a ton of input from the businesses. And I know there are counselors that were there. So I would just encourage people, if they want to sort of understand the genesis of this conversation, to watch that meeting. And I think that will really help sort of frame it for folks.
Oh, there you go.
And also I want to add, we did do a map, Councilor Foster. It went to transportation and parking. I didn't want to confuse it. It's not a regulation. It's not a regulatory map. It's really just an aid, as you said, to make it easier to understand what spaces we're talking about for, because you're right. It would be difficult for anyone to really sort of wrap their head around what are we talking about here. So I absolutely have the map. And I can actually put both those things on the front page of the planning office website. And then there'll be a link. There's, I think the Stan Tech report is maybe a little bit buried, but I can elevate that up to the front page as well for this during this process. But I think those three things together will be very helpful, as the mayor said.
Councilor Jarrett.
Thank you. I had a couple more things I would hope would be clarified. One is there's a formatting problem on the Schedule 8 on-street parking meter zones. A bunch of text is cut off, so we can't read it all. And the other is that the off-street parking areas have their classes listed, but not the on-street ones. So I was having trouble determining where the different classes apply. So if that could be clarified before it gets to the other committees, that would be great.
Any other questions? Yeah, I had a question. I attended that meeting. So are the recommendations that were made by the consultants, does it match precisely with this, or was there other changes? Or did we make slight changes on their recommendations since that meeting? Or we just take them, whatever was presented at that meeting is right in this ordinance change?
For the most part, the recommendations that were made have been incorporated. We did, in putting together the actual amendment text, we discovered there were many other sections that were that needed to be addressed. And so we actually sent the draft back to Jason at Stantec to look at, and he made some sort of editorial comments, but that hadn't been part of the public discussion because there were things that just were, I mean, the focus was really about Main Street and the immediate side streets, but going, diving into the ordinance, we realized that things would affect other pieces and that also there was some just cleanup that had to happen. So from that perspective, there were some other things that were not discussed that are in this, but they're, I would say, minor. And also, Jason made broad brush recommendations about some things to change. So, for example, recommending that the authority for tweaking the fees be granted to the mayor, but the specificity wasn't there. So we had to sort of figure that out. So there are other, adjustments that were made based on sort of broad brush recommendations.
Okay. So, moving forward, the recommendation is that the counselors review that meeting, the video of the meeting, as it'll refresh their, I think it'd be really helpful for me. So as I'm reading through this, all of the items here, that it'll give us a base understanding, and then you could let us know as to what those additional tweaks are beyond what was discussed in that meeting.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Cool. All right. All right. So this item has been introduced. It's going to legislative matters, and we're referring, we need to entertain a motion to refer this to legislative matters and to the TPC.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councillor Jarrett, seconded by Councillor Gore. Any discussion on that? Seeing none. Laura, roll call, please.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
and Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay. 22.159 has been referred to the TPC and legislative matters. Okay, next up, how's everybody doing? Okay, we're getting close. Counselor.
Can we take 1 minute? I need to change locations. I just need to go downstairs and get on another computer.
Let's do a break until 9:45.
Okay. And Jim, I'm gonna leave the meeting, so you'll need to let me back in.
Okay, all right, we'll be watching for you.
Okay, I'll be back.
All right, bye. the meters. Okay, now we're up to item 22.158, an ordinance to amend zoning map on Prince Street. And I believe Carolyn is still here. Carolyn, you have a lot of stuff going on tonight. So I think it's better if we just let you explain this.
Okay, sure. And this one, I will share the map if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the map is embedded into the ordinance here just because this is a proposed zoning map amendment, which means it's a modification to the zoning classification. And it's in the map, proposed map amendment are the two parcels bounded in green shown on the screen there. I can zoom in a little bit if it helps. These parcels have been zoned urban residential B as shown on the screen for decades. The parcels have also been occupied by an auto repair facility of some kind for many, many years, which means it's a pre-existing non-conforming use within the urban residential B district. This parcel was never considered for rezoning. The idea of keeping the residential use is that ultimately the goal would be that that use expires, gets extinguished, and then ultimately reverts to a residential use, which is why it really was never rezoned as a commercial use to match the non-conforming commercial uses that had been on that parcel for so long, because the goal and the plan had been that at some point maybe it would become residential. There are many components to the site that are non-conforming. It's not just the use, but it's also the building, the structure, the site. So there are multiple non-conformities here that make it a really hard parcel to reuse or to convert to a conforming use in the urban residential B district, because so much investment would be required to bring the parcel and the structure into compliance with the urban residential B zone. So the proposal in front of you is to rezone it to planned village, which is, as you can see, the light pink on the screen is the planned village zone, which is what the entire rest of the state hospital, former state hospital property has been zoned. And this little projection was addressed addressed because a lot of that has been residential zoning. The Chapel, Laurel, Rust Avenue neighborhood has been sort of historically a neighborhood, and there wasn't, at the time that the planned village zone was adopted, it was really meant for the original hospital properties. And so this piece wasn't really brought into the fold for that reason. But planned village zoning allows a lot more, allows more density and more flexibility in the reuse. You can have mixed uses, you can have office or other commercial uses along with residential uses, and there's no density cap, if you will, in the planned village district. Along with that, though, there are also specific design guidelines that have been adopted for the planned village use. So there are actually more design related restrictions that come along with the planned village zone than there are in the urban residential B district. So there are two components to it. On the one hand, rezoning it to allow more units, more residential and or more commercial units, would allow an investment in regeneration of this property to make it more consistent with the abutting uses, the abutting residential uses, and also eliminate a lot of the asphalt that you see now with that's devoid of any vegetation, which is part of the reason why this property is non-conforming. And so allowing more units to be developed will allow more return and therefore payback of those modifications to the site to bring it into in a more consistent aesthetic to the surrounding properties and neighborhood. So that's really what the intention behind the rezoning is, to allow and enable that reinvestment and return by allowing greater density. So any redevelopment of the site would still clearly need to be approved by the planning board, but under the sort of rubric of the planned village zone. And then also just in terms of neighborhood meetings, we did do Councillor Gore and Councillor Foster organized a neighborhood meeting before this zoning was introduced, and that seemed to be, this concept was received very well, which is why we decided to go ahead and move it forward at this time. And then of course, this would also require planning board public hearing as well as legislative matters public hearing.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so on the table for us is, this is the introduction of this, and that that what's before us is determining how we're going to go around, you know, if we're going to, how we're going to do the public hearing on this. And typically we, for matters like this, it's going to go to legislative matters. It's also going to go to the planning board, and then it's usually up to the chairs of both bodies whether or not they want to have a joint meeting. So I just rambled a bit there. So planning board, legislative matters are typically where we would send this item, and I'll entertain a motion. And any other places that people think this item should go.
I have a question for.
Sure, go ahead.
Carolyn Mesh. I know the area where you're talking about, Carolyn. Is that up for sale?
Yes, it's actually transferred. The deed has transferred already. It was on the market for a very long time.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah,
Okay.
we had a couple of different parties ask about the potential there. But it did, I believe the transfer happened this summer.
Okay. Isn't there a house right next to it also that's up for sale? Maybe, I don't know if you know, Carolyn, but I drive by there a lot, and I thought I saw another piece of property right beside that up for sale.
Yes, so at the time, the prospective buyer, now I think the transfers happened. The purchaser bought all of the property held by this the family, including the house. The proposed rezoning does not include the existing home. The purchaser has also asked that the rezoning be moved forward, but did not want the house included at this time.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
Carolyn, this is just a in the weeds really question that came up from a constituent today. We've been referring to the lot as, I think, 33 Chapel Street, but on zoning or other discussions, it's listed as Prince Street. And I know it's on the corner, it could be either. Is it intended to be oriented more toward Prince Street, or do you know if there's a real reason for that change? I don't think it impacts it.
Mm-hmm.
I will double check what the legal address is. It doesn't have an impact. I mean, it's surrounded by street, right? So I think that in terms of the end user, it could be either. But I will confirm to make sure we've gotten the right address on the legal document.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Counselor Jarrett.
Yeah, I was wondering, is there a buffer zone like there is between a residential zone and a commercial zone, between a residential zone and a planned village district?
No, there's not a minimum. It's not the same. It's not treated the same. But how that would be handled would be through the site plan review process. So if it seemed that that would be appropriate given the proposed use, then that the planning board would have the jurisdiction to require something like that.
I'll go ahead and move this to the planning board and legislative matters.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Counselor Jarrett, seconded by Counselor Labarge to refer this to the planning board and to legislative matters. Any discussion? Seeing none. Laura, roll call, please.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
and Counselor Moulton.
Yes.
Okay, 22.158 has been referred to the planning board and legislative matters, and they will be holding public hearings either separately or jointly on that item. Next up, 22.110. We've been asked to table this item until our next meeting. So we are moving on to 22.141, an ordinance to amend the zoning map on Bridge Road and Cook Avenue. This is in second reading. And let's see, Laura, can you pull up the map for this?
Sure. Let's see. Okay. Oh, sorry, just 1 second.
And this item has to do with doing an overlay for a property on Cook Avenue and for a property on Bridge Road to allow for affordable housing. I think we're all pretty familiar with both of these sites. We've had meetings about the property on Bridge Road. We've all been out to Cook Avenue. Is there any discussion on this particular item?
Nope.
Carolyn, go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you. I just, I think at the last conversation that we had, I guess it was at the joint public hearing earlier in the month, there was a discussion about whether this would be ready to move forward for a vote tonight, because the Commonwealth has to approve these overlays before the City Council can approve them. And I had not been able to connect with the person at the Department of Housing and Community Development about this. I was finally able to speak with the person last week, and he and I have been in touch over this last past week, but he had said last week that since the Undersecretary of Housing and Economic Development was on vacation last week, it was unlikely that she was going to be able to review this and sign off on it. And that she typically does that at the end of each week, which would mean it will be this week, tomorrow, which means it won't be ready till next week. So it's, and in fact, that's the case. He said there was a slim chance it would be ready for today and nothing came in today. So I would ask that you all table this one as well for your meeting on September 1, because it does look as though we're gonna get the final sign off next week.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Sounds like we have a plan for that one. Okay. So that brings us to resolutions. Item 22.143, a resolution in support of federal assault weapons ban. This is in second reading. We read through this and we discussed this last time, and the sponsors, Karen and Mary Ann, want to speak any more to this, or?
I said what I had to say on the first reading.
Okay.
I mean, I'm very happy to be sponsoring this with Councilor Foster. It's in dire need. There's no question about it.
I will second what Councilor Labarge said. I said what I wanted to say at the last meeting, and in the interim have heard from a number of constituents who are, in support as well. So.
Well, I very much appreciate you both bringing this forward. It's pretty meaningful to me as well. Councilors, any further discussion? Okay, could I get a motion to approve this?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Foster. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Laura, roll call, please.
Councilor Perry,
Yes.
Councilor Elkins,
Yes.
Councilor Foster,
Yes.
Councilor Gore,
Yes.
Councilor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Moulton,
Yes.
and Councilor Nash.
Yes. Okay, so that resolution has been approved. There's no information requests. We have new business. Is there anything anybody'd like to add in for new business? Okay, seeing none, that brings us to a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Again.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Labarge and seconded by Councilor Elkins to adjourn. No discussion on adjournment. Laura, roll call, please.
Councilor Elkins,
Yes.
Councilor Foster,
Yes.
Councilor Gore,
Yes.
Councilor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Moulton,
Yes.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
and Councilor Perry.
Yes.
Okay, councilors, we are adjourned. Have a great 2 more weeks of summer, and we'll see you in a few weeks.